I'm Whitney Neal, 30 years old, and my world nearly collapsed at the dinner table when I heard my father say, "Get your shit together and get out. You've got 48 hours." One second, I was laughing about a client's ridiculous wallpaper obsession. The next, the sound of crystal exploding against wood cracked through our dining room like a gunshot. Dad's wine glass, shattered. Mom's good tablecloth, stained crimson. The chandelier light bouncing off Dad's face made him look like a stranger. This house belongs to Marcus now. Marcus, my brother who vanished to New York years ago chasing acting fantasies, who hasn't sent a birthday card, let alone $1, who's never once asked how Mom's dementia is progressing, or if Dad needs help after his stroke. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here, the daughter who sacrificed everything, who poured $60,000 of my life savings into keeping this place running, who gave up my independence to wipe noses and change bedsheets and hold hands through panic attacks. And now I get 48 hours to disappear. Mom won't look at me. Her hands are shaking as she twists her napkin into knots. Dad leans back in his chair like some kind of king delivering a royal decree, arms crossed, jaw set. I should scream. I should throw something. I should demand answers. Instead, I smile. Of course, Dad. Whatever you think is best. Because here's what they don't know. I've been planning for this moment for months. I've got receipts they never saw me collecting. Evidence they never knew I was gathering. They think they just blindsided the obedient daughter. They have no idea who they're dealing with. The thing is, I wasn't always the family disappointment. Growing up, I was the responsible one. While my brother Marcus was getting his college tuition paid for at NYU, and then getting monthly following your dreams checks sent to his Manhattan apartment, I put myself through Montana State's design program. I came home every weekend to help with yard work. I never asked for money. When Dad had his stroke 3 years ago, guess who dropped everything to move back home? Not Marcus, who was in the middle of important auditions. Me. I turned my second-floor bedroom into a home office so I could work remotely and be there for the physical therapy appointments, the doctor visits, the middle-of-the-night confusion episodes. That room became my sanctuary. I painted the walls a soft sage green and hung my design portfolio pieces on every available space. The east-facing window gave perfect morning light for client video calls. The smell of acrylic paint and coffee became my comfort scent during those long months of recovery. When Mom started showing early signs of dementia last year, I was the one who researched specialists. I was the one who sat with her during the scared, disoriented nights, listening to her shuffle across the hardwood floors at 3 a.m., gently leading her back to bed when she forgot where she was. But Marcus was the golden child. Always had been. Even when he called home asking for money, again, Dad would just sigh and say, "He's following his passion." 6 months ago, things started to shift. Marcus suddenly began calling more often, asking casual questions about the family's financial situation. Dad started making comments about my long-term plans and suggesting I needed to think about settling down with someone. I caught them having hushed phone conversations that stopped the minute I entered a room. The red flag moment came on a Tuesday night in April. I was coming back from a client meeting and heard Dad on the phone in his study. "She's been taking advantage for too long," he was saying. "It's time Marcus came home to claim what's rightfully his." That night, lying in my sage green room surrounded by my design work and 3 years of memories, I started keeping a journal. I started taking screenshots. I started paying attention to every conversation, every slight, every piece of evidence that might matter later. Because deep down, I knew this day was coming. Missoula has a rhythm you can set your watch to. Every morning at 7 a.m., the automated sprinkler systems kick on across the neighborhood, filling the air with the sweet smell of wet grass. Mrs. Patterson's golden retriever, Murphy, starts his daily bark fest at the postal truck around 10. The sound of lawnmowers begins promptly at 8 a.m. on Saturdays, because God forbid your grass gets a millimeter too long in this mountain town paradise. I'd grown to love that rhythm over the past 3 years. It felt stable, safe, like home should feel. But after that phone call I'd overheard, the microaggressions started ramping up. Dad began jokingly commenting on how much food I ate. "Whitney sure does love her free meals," he'd say when I grabbed leftovers. Mom stopped asking for my input on grocery lists, even though I'd been helping with shopping for years. The breaking point came at the neighborhood Labor Day barbecue. We were all standing around the Hendersons' backyard, paper plates loaded with potato salad and grilled corn, when someone asked Dad about his kids. "Well, Marcus is out in New York pursuing his acting career," Dad said with obvious pride. "And this is Whitney. She's still figuring things out." Still figuring things out. Like I wasn't a successful designer with my own client base. Like I hadn't kept his household running for 3 years. Like I was some kind of failure to launch case study instead of the daughter who'd sacrificed her own life to keep his family together. Mrs. Patterson, bless her heart, jumped in immediately. "Whitney's done such beautiful work on your house, Jim, and the way she's taken care of you and Carol, that girl's a treasure." But the damage was done. I smiled and nodded through the rest of the barbecue, but something clicked into place that day. The journal became more detailed. The screenshots became more systematic. 2 weeks later, I discovered Dad had contacted a realtor about getting the house appraised. "Just for insurance purposes," he claimed when I asked. But I found the email thread. The subject line was, "Preparing for sale, family transition." Marcus had booked a flight home for the first time in 3 years. Dad had already started the paperwork to transfer the deed, and I was about to become homeless with 2 days' notice. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the quiet daughter who'd been taking care of business while they'd been taking care of themselves. The evidence collection started that night. I wasn't just angry, I was methodical. 5 years of caregiving had taught me patience, organization, and how to document everything for insurance claims and medical records. Those skills were about to come in very handy. First stop, Facebook memories and Instagram archives. I'd been documenting our family life without even realizing it. There were dozens of posts chronicling Dad's stroke recovery, photos of us at physical therapy appointments, celebrating small victories, me painting his walker with racing stripes to make him laugh. The timestamp on my dad's first walk around the block post-stroke post was March 15, 2020. Marcus wasn't in a single photo. I found my Instagram story highlights from 2022 labeled Home Renovation, where I'd documented refinishing the entire first floor's hardwood myself. 18 hours of sanding, staining, and polyurethaning that saved the family $8,000. Marcus had liked exactly 0 of those posts. Next, I dove into my text message history. My iPhone automatically backs everything up, and I'd never bothered to delete old conversations. Marcus's message pattern told a story. Sporadic contact. Always asking for updates on how everyone's doing financially. Never offering help. His texts from the past 3 years told a story. Sporadic contact. Always asking for updates on how everyone's doing financially. Never offering help. His texts from when Dad was in the hospital. "Can't make it home, big audition this week. Keep me posted on his condition." From 2022. "Any word on Mom's test results? I'm slammed with callbacks." From last month. "Finally time to claim what's mine." And "She's had her free ride long enough." But the real gold mine was in my voicemail archive. I'm one of those people who never deletes voicemails from family, and my carrier stores them for years. There was Dad's message from February. "Whitney, we need to have a serious conversation about your future here. This arrangement can't continue indefinitely." His tone wasn't parental concern. It was cold, transactional, Like I was a problem to be solved rather than a daughter who'd given up her independence to care for him. The Ring doorbell footage was next. I'd installed the system in 2021 after Mom had a few episodes where she'd tried to leave the house confused and disoriented. The motion-activated camera had been recording everyone who'd come and gone for 3 years. Marcus hadn't appeared in a single frame. Not once. Every delivery, every emergency repair, every 2 a.m. ambulance call for Dad's chest pains. I was the one answering the door. The timestamps told the story of a daughter who'd been present for every crisis while her brother lived his best life 3 states away. But the audio feature had caught something even better. Last week, while I was at a client meeting, the camera had picked up Dad talking to someone on the front porch. The audio was crystal clear. "We just need to get her out so we can sell. Marcus needs the money for his new business venture, and frankly, we're tired of supporting a grown woman." The person he was talking to? The realtor. I sat in my sage green office at 2 a.m., surrounded by manila folders organized by date and type of evidence. The smell of cold coffee mixed with the faint scent of the lavender diffuser I'd bought to help Mom sleep. 3 years of receipts, bank statements, and documentation were spread across my desk like a war room strategy session. Utility bills in my name since 2020, $60,000 in home maintenance receipts, new roof, HVAC repair, plumbing upgrades, all paid from my accounts. Property tax payments that Dad had forgotten to make, covered by my emergency fund. Insurance claims I'd filed and followed up on when Mom left the stove on and nearly burned down the kitchen. But the most damning evidence was in Dad's email account. He'd asked me to help him set up automatic bill pay 6 months ago, which meant I had his password. I know. Invasion of privacy. But desperate times, right? The email thread with his financial advisor laid it all out. Need to liquidate house equity to cover Marcus's debts and new business investment. Whitney's situation needs to be resolved quickly and cleanly. Marcus wasn't just coming home to claim the house. He was $35,000 in credit card debt from his latest failed venture. Dad wasn't just kicking me out. He was planning to sell my childhood home to bail out his golden child again. But here's the thing they didn't know. I'd also been quietly consulting with a real estate attorney. Turns out, when you've been contributing significantly to property maintenance, taxes, and improvements for multiple years while serving as a family caregiver, you might have more legal standing than your parents think. Marcus was landing at Missoula, Montana airport on Friday morning. I had less than 48 hours to prepare for the showdown of my life. Wednesday evening, I made my move. I texted Dad. "I understand your decision. Could we please have a family dinner Friday night so I can say goodbye properly? I'd like to invite some people who've been important to our family." His response was immediate. "Of course. We want this transition to be as smooth as possible." Smooth? Right. I spent Thursday setting up what I privately called the theater. I invited Mrs. Patterson, who'd been Mom's closest friend for 20 years and had witnessed every sacrifice I'd made. I called Uncle Dan, Dad's younger brother, who'd always been the fairest voice in family disputes. I asked the Hendersons from next door, who'd watched me mow our lawn and shovel our driveway for 3 winters running. "Just a little farewell dinner," I told each of them. "I want to thank everyone who's been part of our family's journey." The living room flows into the dining room in our open-concept layout, and our 65-inch TV is mounted where everyone can see it from the dinner table. I spent hours setting up a slideshow presentation on my laptop, complete with a wireless connection to the TV. To anyone who asked, it was going to be a nostalgic trip through family memories. Marcus arrived Friday afternoon with 2 suitcases and the swagger of someone who thought he was coming home to claim his kingdom. He looked good. LA had been kind to him. Tanned, fit, wearing clothes that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 2 months. He walked through the front door like he owned the place, which, according to Dad, he now did. "Whitney." He gave me a hug that felt like a performance. God, it's been too long. This place looks amazing. You've really taken care of it. The irony was almost too much to handle. Dinner prep filled the house with the smell of pot roast, Mom's signature comfort food, and a recipe that went back to my grandmother. I'd chosen it deliberately. Nothing says family tradition like the meal we'd eaten for every major holiday and life event. As guests arrived, I played the gracious hostess. Mrs. Patterson brought her famous green bean casserole. Uncle Dan showed up with a bottle of Dad's favorite whiskey. The Hendersons came bearing homemade dinner rolls, still warm from the oven. Marcus held court at the dining room table, regaling everyone with stories from his latest almost breakthrough audition. Dad beamed with pride, hanging on every word. Mom fluttered around, clearly anxious but trying to play the happy hostess. I sat quietly, occasionally refilling water glasses, waiting for my moment. After the main course, I stood up and picked up the TV remote. "Before we have dessert," I said, keeping my voice steady and warm, "I wanted to share something with everyone. Since I'm transitioning out of this house, I thought it would be nice to look back on some memories of what this place has meant to our family." Marcus leaned back in Grandpa's chair, the chair that had been at the head of this table for 60 years, and grinned. "Oh, this should be fun. Family nostalgia time." Mrs. Patterson smiled indulgently. Uncle Dan raised his whiskey glass in a small toast. The Hendersons settled in like they were expecting a heartwarming slideshow. "Let me just pull this up," I said, clicking the wireless connection. The TV screen lit up with a title slide, "The Real Story of 1247 Maple Street." That's when Marcus's smile started to fade. "I thought we'd start with some recent history," I continued conversationally. "You know, just to give everyone context for the changes happening in our family." The first image appeared on screen, Marcus's text message from 2019. "Can't make it home, pilot season starting." Timestamp clearly visible. The room went quiet. "This was when Dad was in the ICU," I explained calmly. "Pilot season, you understand?" Click. Next image. My Facebook post showing Dad's first successful physical therapy session, me beaming beside his wheelchair. March 15, 2020. We had a lot of these appointments. Click. Marcus's credit card debt statement, the one from his email account that I'd accidentally come across. $45,000. That's a lot of failed dreams. Mrs. Patterson's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Uncle Dan set down his whiskey glass with a sharp clink against the wood. "Whitney." Dad's voice was warning, dangerous. "That's enough." "Oh, I'm just getting started." Click. The Ring doorbell compilation video began playing. 3 years of footage, compressed into 2 minutes, showing every emergency, every delivery, every repair visit. A door that Marcus never appeared in. The room was dead silent now except for the audio from the video, my voice answering the door, signing for packages, letting in EMTs. "This is interesting," I continued, my voice getting stronger. 3 years of footage, and my brother managed to avoid every single family crisis. That takes real commitment. Marcus was no longer leaning back in Grandpa's chair. He was sitting forward, his face flushing red. "What is this supposed to prove?" "I'm getting there." Click. Financial records appeared on screen. Every utility bill, every repair receipt, every tax payment. All with my name on them. All paid from my accounts. $75,000, I said, letting the number hang in the air. "That's what I've contributed to keeping this house running, not counting the value of full-time caregiving, which the state of Colorado calculates at about $35 an hour." Uncle Dan was doing math in his head. I could see it on his face. But here's my favorite piece of evidence. The audio began playing from the Ring doorbell. Dad's voice, crystal clear, talking to the realtor about getting rid of the Whitney situation so they could liquidate assets for Marcus's business needs. Mom's face had gone completely white. Mrs. Patterson was staring at Dad like she'd never seen him before. The Hendersons were looking at each other with barely concealed shock. "So let me understand this correctly," I said, clicking to the final slide. A simple white screen with black text. Family is supposed to support each other, not use each other. "Marcus, you want to claim this house. What exactly are you claiming? The mortgage payments you never made? The nights you never spent taking care of our parents? The $75,000 you never contributed?" Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Or maybe you're claiming the right to sell our childhood home to pay off your credit card debt while the daughter who's actually been here gets kicked out with 2 days' notice?" Uncle Dan slowly stood up from his chair. "Jim," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "what the hell is wrong with you?" Mrs. Patterson was shaking her head, her eyes filling with tears. "Whitney, honey, I had no idea they were treating you like this." Dad tried to regain control. "This is private family business, and Whitney is manipulating the situation." "Manipulating?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Dad, you involved our neighbors in kicking me out. You made it public business when you decided to humiliate me in front of people I care about. So let's finish this publicly." I pulled out a folder from the kitchen counter, one more surprise I'd been saving. "Since we're talking about claiming things, I thought you should know that I've been in touch with a real estate attorney. Turns out, when someone contributes significantly to property maintenance and taxes while serving as a family caregiver, they might have legal standing." The folder contained mortgage pre-approval documents. I'd qualified to buy out my parents' share of the house. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady as steel. "Marcus, you can have this house. Just pay me back the $75,000 I've invested first, plus interest, plus the value of 3 years of full-time caregiving." Marcus's face went from red to pale. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know. That's why I've taken the liberty of getting pre-approved for a mortgage. I'm buying this house. You can visit like a normal family member, or you can leave. But you're not claiming anything that you haven't earned." I walked over to Grandpa's chair and gently placed my hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You'll need to move." For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Uncle Dan started a slow clap that built into something that sounded like justice. Mrs. Patterson reached over and squeezed my hand. "Honey, your grandfather would be so proud." The Hendersons were nodding approval. Even Mom, through her confusion and anxiety, seemed to understand that something had shifted in the room's power dynamic. Dad sat frozen, realizing that his manipulation had not only failed, but had been exposed in front of people whose opinions mattered to him. Marcus looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, a way to salvage his dignity. Finding none, he stood up slowly and walked toward the stairs. "I'll be leaving in the morning," he said quietly. And just like that, the house felt like home again. The next morning, I changed the locks. Changed. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Mrs. Patterson and Uncle Dan were there as witnesses. I wanted everything documented. Dad and Mom sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee from mugs I'd given them last Christmas. We hadn't talked much since the dinner party explosion, but the silence wasn't angry anymore. It was the quiet that comes after a storm, when everyone's assessing the damage. "Whitney," Dad said finally, "I owe you an apology." "You owe me more than that," I replied, "but it's a start." The round table I'd ordered arrived that afternoon. It replaced the rectangular one where Grandpa's chair had held court for so many years. No head of the table now, just a circle where everyone sits as equals. Marcus left for the airport without saying goodbye. I found out later through Uncle Dan that he'd moved back in with friends in LA. Dad had quietly closed the equity line application and canceled the realtor meetings. We kept the pot roast tradition, though. Every Sunday, the smell of comfort food fills the house, but now it's joined by laughter instead of tension. Mrs. Patterson usually joins us, and sometimes Uncle Dan brings his famous cornbread. The Hendersons stop by when they smell food cooking. Apparently, I inherited Mom's gift for making too much and sharing it freely. Mom's dementia progression has slowed since the stress levels in the house decreased. She still has her confused moments, but now she has Mrs. Patterson during the day when I'm with clients, and a network of neighbors who check in regularly. I gave Mrs. Patterson a spare key, not because she's family by blood, but because she's family by choice. Uncle Dan has one too. People who show up for the hard days earn access to the good ones. The sage green office upstairs is still my favorite room in the house. The morning light streaming through that north window reminds me every day that some spaces are worth fighting for, and some battles are worth winning. My client base has grown by word of mouth from the neighbors who witnessed the dinner party showdown. Turns out, people like working with designers who stand up for themselves. Mrs. Patterson calls me the girl who knows her worth, and somehow that's become the best referral system I could ask for. 3 months later, Marcus sent a text. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. But honestly, I am. Not because I won some family battle, but because I finally learned the difference between being used and being loved. Family isn't about who shares your DNA. It's about who shows up when things get difficult. It's about who celebrates your victories instead of trying to diminish them. It's about who sees your worth instead of taking it for granted. Sometimes the people who love you best aren't the ones who raised you. They're the ones who choose to stay when everyone else expects you to leave. If you've ever been the family member who gives everything and gets ultimatums in return, I want you to know something. Your worth isn't measured by how much others are willing to take from you. It's measured by how much you're willing to stand up for yourself when it matters most. The house is still mine. The family dinners are still happening. But now they're filled with people who earn their place at the table instead of people who assumed they deserved it. And Grandpa's chair? I moved it to my office upstairs, where it holds my design portfolios, and reminds me daily that some legacies are worth preserving, and some are worth rewriting entirely. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Drop your story in the comments.